In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be previewing the Derby d'Italia against Juventus, the Europa League clash against Ludogorets, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com.
Recupera Brozovic, andiamo in contropiede, la porta è vuota, tira, attenzione, e gol!
Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host Nima, Tavallaey, wishing you all a good week or a good evening or day or whatever time it is you're listening to this, and hoping that all of you are well and that everyone, and also extra thoughts and prayers to everyone affected all over the world, affected by the coronavirus and the restrictions and everything that's going on in Italy, in China, in Iran, and in lots of places. So hope you're all staying safe throughout all this. But let's move on to, let's talk about what the football part of it. And I'm joined by the preview writer for SempreInter.com, Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's all right. And looking forward to getting our teeth sunk into this week.
Indeed. And we are also joined yet again, this is twice in a row now, the gentleman ultra himself, Mr. Richard Hall. Good to have you back again, Rich.
Yeah, great to be back, but I'm a bit concerned I'm bad luck. Because the first time I came, and we lost to Lazio, and then everything else that happened since. I'm getting a bit worried now.
So it's Richard's fault that Italy is in lockdown, pretty much. Yeah, no, we're not gonna take that as a bad omen. It's at all. We're very happy you're back. It's been a long time, and it's good to have you back 2 episodes in a row. So basically, what happened, as everyone knows, Inter played against Ludogorets in last week in a game that was, I think, for me, it was nothing. It was a complete deja vu of when Nerazzurri was in charge of Inter, because I almost literally fell asleep, as in I started snoring after watching that parts of that first half. I have never seen, it was a really, really poor game from Inter, and it touches on, and this is something I wanted to discuss with you two and hear what you guys think about. This was now the 4th game in a row where Inter, after Christmas, Inter have started really slowly, as you've mentioned in previous episodes, Mo, that if it's energy conserving energy or whatever, but this is so different from what we saw in the beginning of the season when away against Barcelona, for example, or Borussia Dortmund, or all games. It didn't matter if Inter were playing Lecce or Barcelona. In contest teams went out there and they completely dominated from the get-go. But now we've had 4 or 5 games in a row where Inter slowly get into games, and so therefore we have to assume that this is a new game plan by Antonio Conte. And I gotta be honest, I don't know how to feel about that. I'm a little bit conflicted, because I think it sends a wrong message to the players, and I think that's what kind of caused the defeat against Lazio, and also above all the meltdown in the first half against Milan. What are your thoughts on that, Mo? Do you agree?
I agree that it's clearly a thing, and it's a thing like I've intended before. It seems like it's a thing that's intentional, that's part of a plan. And I'm not hating on it. I mean, I definitely prefer the high impact, high octane football that was being played at the beginning of the season. But if it isn't in fact a thing that is required to grind out results in a team that is depleted, and especially in midfield that is severely depleted and needs to manage its energy properly, and that means that the team is going to have enough in the gas tank in the final sprint to properly sprint, I'm all for it. Because, I mean, look, Lazio aside, the results haven't been that bad. The results have been okay. They've been bad early in the year when we tried to impose our will in the first half and then drop off in the second half. But ever since that energy management philosophy, the alleged or the ostensible energy management philosophy has been put into place, the results have been pretty good. Again, Lazio and Napoli aside, I think Napoli is a result of a post-derby hangover. It was just too soon. And I think Lazio, like we discussed previously, it's just a terrible refereeing. So,
but what about Ludogorets then? Because I mean that first half was unwatchable.
You remember what I said last week about the Ludogorets? This is exactly the game that I predicted. Minimum effort, clean sheet for Padelli. Very important to get a clean sheet for Padelli. Minimum effort, maximum output. I was surprised. I was surprised it ended up 2-0. Very pleasantly surprised, albeit by penalty. But I mean, I thought a 0-0 would have meant the world for Inter. A 0-0, minimum energy, get the 3 points that are very important against Sampdoria, which of course never happened. All with the eyes on having a full, well-rested, able squad to face Juve. So that's what I think. I think it's just very savvy energy management by the coaching staff with those big games in mind.
Okay. Richard, I'm interested to hear what you think. What's your take on this?
I'm a bit stuck on this one, if I'm honest, because at first, when we saw Inter go into January, and there definitely was a lot of, Conte always made it very clear that he wanted reinforcements, and he certainly was vocal about it. And so you could kind of understand that he obviously thought the team was starting to get a bit depleted. The intensity that he played with earlier in the season maybe taking some toll. But if I'm honest about it, in some of those games pre-Christmas, I actually thought there was a little bit of complacency. I'm not saying that it isn't a game plan from Conte. I can completely see that it is, and you need to change things up because you can't play at the same levels all the way through the season. Or what you end up, you just basically a Bielsa team. It doesn't. You're going to have burnout at some point, especially in all competitions.
Rich, we don't use the B word in this pod.
It's been banished, right? There's no problem.
That man, and what's his name? The Z word, the Z one, Zeman. I mean, Jesus. Yeah. Sorry, go.
Exactly. So there's obviously going to be some sort of plan to, as you both say, conserve energy. But I do think that the plan isn't being followed properly in some respects, and whether that's because, especially against Ludogorets, there is some sort of complacency there because Inter have picked up and improved so vastly from last season, and they've got a lot of praise. For me, I still think that there are games where, and we'll use Ludogorets as probably the main one there, where you potentially can kill a game off. And for me, if Inter are going to go into games with a high intensity and try and do some damage early, which they've proved they can do, I've got no problems then them conserving energy and after that and defending that lead. I think that's it's maybe a bit of a traditional way to do things, but it works. My fear for this is that it did look too stale. And at any one point, if you're not creating the chances, if you're not pressuring the opposition and giving them too much of the ball, you do stand to risk a chance of getting punished, especially when we've had someone like Padelli who's not been in good form, etc. So I'm a little torn of how I definitely think there's a plan there, but I also think that Inter, I can't see that Conte couldn't be looking at the games and be completely happy with them.
See, this is that I really agree with that, and I would like to add a little bit to that. And my only addendum to that is, I think that when you change game plan, because going into January, he was complaining and was upset that he had a depleted squad, which he has a point in. But then when he gets the players, they signed 3 players for him. And then all of a sudden, then it's time to put in the brakes. To me, there's a disconnect there. I don't understand. The message becomes muddled, and this confuses me, and I think it confuses the players a little bit as well. Because when they are down on personnel, it's pedal to the metal. But now they all of a sudden have options, and then we're kind of, we're waiting to see. I don't understand it. It confuses me, and I think it can. Yes, sorry, go.
Injuries are an X factor that injuries to the midfield. I think this is the most important. Injuries and suspensions in the midfield has been the biggest, spanner in the works. Because, sure, we reinforced on the flanks and we got Christian Eriksen, but Eriksen, by Conte's own admission, wasn't supposed to be introduced to the side for a good 3, 4, 5 weeks. and at a much slower pace than the baptism of fire that he's been thrown into. So I think, while I agree, the team reinforced and had a very strong January transfer window. The reinforcements were in positions that weren't subsequently ravaged by injury, meaning the midfield module. Barella, Sensi, Brozovic, Gagliardini. Each one of these guys has missed at least a couple of games due to suspension or injury since then. Actually, I don't think Barella has missed anything, maybe due to suspension. But regardless, the midfield, and that's really the one component in a Conte system that needs to be firing on all cylinders throughout the entirety of the match for his plan to really take place, hasn't been all that consistent. And that's why, I agree with you guys. I don't think Conte is all too happy with what he sees. And I don't think anyone can say, I'm not saying I'm loving this football. I'm not. But what I'm loving is I'm loving the result. I'm loving the fact that we weren't as naive as Pioli's Milan in the derby. That's what I'm loving. When I sit back and look at the 4-2 and that phenomenal second half where the team was able to, be it due to a fortuitous first goal and then a fantastic golazzo by Brozovic, whatever the circumstances were. But the circumstances happened because the players were up to it. And why were they up to it? Because they weren't as naive as the Milan players who dumped all they had in the first 45 minutes and just were running around with their tongues hanging out in the second half. So that's what I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying the maturity of it, not the football. I agree with you 1,000,000%. The football's been awful, for sure.
Yeah, the thing is, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with the example you used about the derby. I think, but I'm just saying that if we look at, I think this is something that he's doing, that's been done, on purpose, and if we compare it to the earlier in the season when the tactic was something else, then the results were better. I think this group of players isn't ready yet to start doing what I think is his plan, and I think what you're alluding to, this kind of gestire le partite, as they say in Italy, this kind of controlling the game. I don't think this team is quite ready yet, because I think they seem to almost, they react, and I not react, but they seem to almost feel like they have a carte blanche to not, like Richard said, to play with complacency, and that bothers me, because Inter, when they're complacent, we all know what that is a spiral that can spiral easily out of control. So I think that's my worry. That's a little bit my worry.
I think as well, it concerns me just a little bit in big games, because if you are playing against a lesser team, you might be able to have the ball for a certain amount of time, and you've got the better quality players. So you can conserve the energy in some respects, and potentially with the quality you've got on the pitch, you're always going to get an opportunity to steal a goal. You can't do that against the bigger teams. And like you say, both of you make good points in the sense of we're not there yet. We're not in that. We've not had this time period to. We're trying to adapt two philosophies almost in one season. And for me, until you're expert at that, you just say there's teams that do that better than Inter, but there's not many teams that can be as ferocious as a Conte team. So for me, I'd rather see more of the first.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. I couldn't agree more with that, and that is what I'm a little bit worried about, because, well, okay, now they're definitely rested. They played last Thursday. They didn't play on the weekend. They play on the Thursday again in a game that Inter, like Mo said, I mean, the most important thing was an easy win that doesn't bother the energy levels, and no one can claim that they were exhausted after the Ludogorets game, as they barely ran, and also it was hardly the first team that played too. So I think they'll, and I can't imagine he'll start with the best team against Ludogorets on Thursday either. So for sure, Inter will have their best team against Juventus on Sunday, if there's no, whether if that game is played behind closed doors, or if it's open to the public, remains to be seen. But it seems like they're going to go on with the game, because there's not many more match days that they can fit postponed games into. But either way, Inter will have their their best team against Juventus, and I think that if he goes with this careful approach, I think Juventus will destroy Inter, and that really bothers me. Did you agree with that, Mo?
Do I agree that it bothers you? Of course I do.
No. But
do you agree that?
Can you see? Can you see the change? No, I meant can you?
I know what you meant.
That was a good one.
But
I walked right into that one. Nice one.
I think the Lazio game, in the grand scheme of things, was very important. I think it's a much harder loss to stomach now. I think Conte, in his grand scheme, like the whole crazy web of results and mapping the season out, had that game pinned out as a away draw. That was what he was going for. Unfortunately, for reasons spoken about many times before, it did not happen. But I think Conte is still a very, very good big game manager. I think a big game manager and the big picture manager as well in the trajectory of the season. I think that all of what's happening in terms of physical output, etc., has been done with something very particular in mind. And I do not believe that we're going to see anything like the Inter we've seen in the first half against Milan, or across the 90 minutes against Lazio, or across the 90 minutes against Ludogorets, against Juve. I think we're going to see something very different, something very similar to the Inter we saw in the first halves against both Barca and Dortmund. That's what I'd like to believe. I'd like to believe that by that time, as we see, Christian Eriksen is becoming Sensi plus, and I think we're going to be in for a good show. I think he's going to go for all 3 points. I think that's the mission. The mission is to take back the 3 points from Juve.
Well, and that is my hope of, and I think that is the case. But I hope that this is how they approach it. But I'm not convinced. I think that this is a dip in form. I think this isn't just Conte. I think this isn't just him changing the approach. I think this is him understanding that the team is out of form, and therefore he's trying to minimize the risks. Because that's what I think, and I don't know. That kind of bothers me, because Juventus, although they haven't looked so good, they haven't played so well, they win games, and they've got that guy that scores goals, Mr. CR7. He needs half a chance, and it's in the back of the net. And his form recently, it's 11 last Serie A games. He scored 16 goals. That's insane. And you Inter playing him in that form, and Inter a little bit out of form, and I don't like where this is heading. that's all I gotta say. Richard, what do you think? Do you agree with Mo that this is that Inter, that this is not a dip in form, or do you agree more with me that this is a dip in form and that Inter are? Where are you on that?
It's a difficult one, because I can't see. I agree with your point about that. It would worry me if Inter go into this game and try and play in the way they have been doing, because, as you rightly say, there's no one better at playing badly and winning than Juventus, and they're experts at that, and they don't panic, and they don't seem to they know they're going to get an opportunity, and the fact that they have got Ronaldo means that they're 5 times more likely to score that opportunity than they were last season. So, Inter can't go into a war of attrition in some respects. It's got to be more of a bit of a shock and awe. And I just hope that he has been understanding, yes, they've been out of form. And these games that have been a bit tepid have been to get the confidence back. But I'm hoping that he knows that he's a big enough coach to know, and he should be, because he knows Juventus inside out, that to go and play his way against Juventus is probably in a high-tempo game is the only way that we stand a chance of winning there. I don't, because again, you look at it, Juventus aren't in the best of form, and if you do scare them and you do put their backs to the wall, and you're not playing that turgid game that's just allowing you're going to their levels in a sense. If they do get overawed in the first part, then they've got to come out and the game will get stretched. So it will be interesting. But my other fear as well is whether Handanovic is going to be back for this or not.
Yes,
because I think that's a big key thing. Because if we play a war of
Padelli against Juventus, I mean,
it's scary, isn't it? And it's not his fault. But
no, it's not his fault. I'm not having to go at him.
That record of Ronaldo's and
Daniel Padelli on that. Like, I have nightmares about that. Like, it's just Sorry, go.
No, but that's mainly it. So I hope that it is all for a bigger purpose, and that like Mo was saying before, that it is a plan. But these games where we have seen some tepid performances, then they need to up it. But they can't be complacent against Juventus. It's got to be all out or nothing really.
Well, we'll see what happens. I think I speak for Richard and myself that we hope that the Mo analysis, that it's Mystic Mo time, and that he's absolutely right and his analysis is spot on, and Inter come out with the right mentality on Sunday when the game is on. But we'll have to see.
Just a question on that.
Yeah, go.
Just before we move on to that, just as a thought, do you think that Inter playing, say if it is played behind closed doors, do you think that helps or hinders us? Helps without a doubt. I mean, just think about it. That that atmosphere against Inter, that stadium is the sound is very good there, and they hate Inter, and they can't bully the referee and Inter into stuff when it's empty and quiet. I think that speaks to Inter. I don't know. What do you think, Mo? That's a good question, by the way. What do you think, Mo?
I think it. I was saving it for later, but no, I definitely think that silver linings from this potentially terrible crisis is that if it is played behind closed doors, it's definitely in Inter's favor. Not only do they get to rest an extra week, but they get to play the most pivotal match away in like we say, in Mordor, behind closed doors. That's I understand what Richard's coming at. Like with the crowd there, maybe the team can reverse fire up the team, etc. But I think I still think that Inter are a bit too immature to be able to handle that sort of pressure and absorb it. Like a Cristiano Ronaldo, where he actually thrives on that, or a Jamie Vardy or whatever.
Yeah.
These guys who absorb the boos and the whistles and the jeers and take it in, and use it as an engine and a motivator. I don't think the team is
like Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Yeah. I mean, he just exactly. The worst thing you can do against him is to boo him and piss him off. The best thing you can do is to just ignore him, because then he doesn't get angry. When he gets angry, that fires him up, and Ronaldo is exactly like that, like you say. And I think therefore playing this game in dead library silence speaks only to Inter's advantage.
Yeah.
Mm. Right. So what about the prediction part? Because we got to do that now before we move. Let's start with we're on the topic, the Juve game. How do you think this is going to pan out, Mo? You are Mr. Positivity, so and you have been arguing for positive view. So I'm thinking you think Inter will win.
Yeah. Look, no, absolutely not. I don't think the Lega is going to ever let Inter win. Never let Inter. Let's not never let Inter win. Never let Juve lose the Derby d'Italia at home. It's just not going to happen. So I think it's going to be an extremely frustrating robbery, akin to what happened in Florence last year. Some ridiculous handball or whatever penalty in the dying moments of the game for Cristiano to come and level the points. I think Inter are going to play very, very well, and they're going to be fighting. They're going to be up against it from the very first whistle against terrible refereeing. I don't know. No one's been assigned yet, but I think that in our hearts, it's going to be heartbreakingly close, and we're not going to be able to take it across the line.
So you're thinking a draw here?
Yeah, I think a 2-2 draw. I think 1-0 Inter, Juve equalize. Second half, Inter score, and then a ridiculous penalty towards the end.
Gianluca Rocchi steps in. No, and does what he does best. Right, Rich, what's your prediction?
Very similar in a sense, but I'll go with 1-1. I can see it very much like Mo says. I think that Inter will go out and start to play with a bit of intensity. Without the crowd there, like you say, people like Cristiano may not have his ego polished enough. But I think that with Juventus, no matter what, I think whatever circumstances, they're professional enough to do a job. And I can see that it could, be exactly that Inter put a lot into that game, work really hard, and just don't get enough out of it. But at the end of the day, a 1-1 draw, I'd take that.
Oh yeah, away at their stadium, 1-0 draw I'll take that any day of the week. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening. I see them going out there and playing really, really well. Actually, I see Inter trying to do what Mo says. My prediction is that Inter will try to do that, but they will fail, and Juventus will win pretty comfortably 3-0. I'm not, and that this will be the turning point in the whole narrative about how Sarri's not doing well and his Juve isn't doing well. I think they're gonna play his Sarri ball against Inter, and of course it's gonna come against Inter, of course. So no, I'm not confident going into this at all, unfortunately.
Alternatively, should Sarri ball implode against Inter, this could be a cataclysm of an entire project.
Absolutely.
I mean, with UEFA barking up behind City and PSG, this could be. I mean, I don't want to get too optimistic and start drawing fancy.
I was gonna say I can hear you salivating when you say this.
I know. I mean, it could be the beginning of something. The beginning of the normal, beginning of continuity, like you say, Sarri clicks and everything happens, blah blah blah. But alternatively, it could be something, absolutely. Let's see.
You kill me, man. You kill me, man. You kill me. It's like I can literally hear you. Like I can see you, and it's brilliant. Right. That's most fantasy right there. Right. And I think all the fantasy of everyone, but the glee in your voice really got to me there. Right. Let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something in the world of football heavily, starting with the negative stuff. This week's Moggi, which will be presented by Mr. Richard Hall.
Right. Okay. This one was fairly easy for me. And it's just on some parts, not all, but the Milan fan base, because obviously they played against Fiorentina this weekend, and it was reported that Patrick Cutrone, who, let's remember, was born up the road from Milan in Como. He might not be the most gifted footballer, but this guy works hard for any team, but he really worked hard for Milan. He loves the club. He is Rossoneri. There's no question about that. And he's come back he went to England, so it wasn't an offensive move. It wasn't like he moved to Inter or somewhere else. And then he's come back to Fiorentina, which again isn't really an offensive move in any form. And some of the Milan fans were giving horrendous abuse, but worst of all, giving insults, wishing that he ended up like Davide Astori. And I just think that's just so wrong, and just so. Just everything about that's bad. I don't normally react on Twitter or anything to anything like that, but that I did a little bit because I just thought it was abhorrent. It's no need to give someone who's given a lot for a club abuse anyway, but then to insult the club even further and sully the memory of someone who, was by all accounts one of those likable people, in his team and in the league. So, yeah, so for me, that's the negative of the week, and let's hope we don't hear any more of that.
Agreed. Right, let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. Positivity, Mr. Mo Nassar.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of these qualities.
So, look, I'm not saying anything. I don't want to say anything bad. I mean, of course, a potential pandemic is an awful thing, and this is, of course, I'm not. But all I'm saying is, for once, the schedule might be playing in Inter's favor, and for thank circumstance, albeit horrific, but in a very, very narrow light of an Inter schedule where it's always been very, very, very Inter. But the fact the derby this weekend, the Inter can be played behind closed doors is just we have to thank circumstance for that, And
Oh my God!
I happily opened the podcast by saying, thoughts and prayers and all that stuff.
I love the fact that you're so. I love the petulance of it. Like you just, oh dear, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I think everyone got what you.
Move on quick.
I love it. No, I think everyone got what you said. Yeah, we're not happy that it's a pandemic, but the fact that Inter play Juve behind closed doors and it's quiet is your. Yeah, I hear you.
And get an extra week off, so that too, an extra week's
the
recovery.
whole thing. Yeah, an extra week recovery. That's fair enough. Ah, Jesus, I'm gonna get an earful for this one. Right, thanks for that, Mo. Right, let's move on to something much more comical. This week's frog, which I'll be presenting myself.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
So in the Europa League last week between Getafe and Ajax, which Ajax lost away at Getafe, what happened was the Getafe player Alan Nyom was tackled and he was hit, and it seemed like he really hurt himself because he started rolling uncontrollably on the floor. Ryan Babel, yes, that Ryan Babel, former Liverpool player, thought it was really, really, really exaggerated, and instead he decided to imitate him by throwing himself next to Alan Nyom and rolling back and forth and pretending to cry. I mean, there's shithousery and then there's shithousery, and Ryan Babel took it to another level. If you haven't seen it, this is, you have to see it. It's all over on social media. It's absolutely hilarious. And for anyone who doesn't like players simulating injuries, well, and exaggerating when they're hurt, you'll absolutely love this clip. So look it up. It's Getafe Ajax, Ryan Babel. Right, that's all we had time for this reduced episode of Studio Inter due to the game against Sampdoria being cancelled as a precaution to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So we'll be back next week, hopefully, talking about an Inter win against Juve and an Inter progression to the round of last 16. As always, I'd like to thank you, Mo, for coming on and showing and taking and embodying the petulance of football in a brilliant way.
Thoughts and prayers, guys. Thoughts and prayers.
Jesus Christ. And as always, Mr. Richard Hall, the Gentleman Ultra, thanks for coming on. It's good. Don't be a stranger.
Yeah. Thank you. No, it won't be in. Oh, well, unless it's bad luck again, and the bubonic plague strikes or we get relegated after my appearance. So, yeah, hopefully not.
Yes, no, let's hope nothing like that happens. As always, I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey, wishing you 3 points, qualification to the round of 16 in the Europa League, and as always, sempre e solo Forza Inter.